Hi, this is Fran with Stampendous. We're continuing, or I should say, I'm continuing my Fabulous Friday Fun watercolor series. And today we're going to be featuring some fun combinations from our balloons and more. And the more is cupcakes. So I'm going to start right in with the stamping. I'm going to assume you've been watching some of the other ones, and we won't repeat much. We'll just move right ahead and have some fun developing this fun little cupcake card. Okay, so with all our stamping done and my card dry and all my colors primed in my palette, the painting part goes very quick. I'm going to switch the colors around just a little bit. Let's start with this area. Okay, so I went back and forth a little bit, but you can see I did more shadowing behind on either side so that those cupcakes looked a little bit further back. And I still assumed a lighting from this side that I did more of a core area of more vivid color to this part of the cupcake to make it look a little bit more rounded. So I'm waiting for this to dry a little bit, and then we'll do our little shadows underneath. So now I'll bring that mostly gray down here and add it to some of my blue. If you have a nice sharp pencil, sign your work, have some fun with it. And now let's do a whole sky full of balloons. If you're going to do a message, I'd suggest you start with that. And I had the two messages on one block and made sure they were straight. But this time I'm just going to stamp each one separately. I just want to check it here and see what I'm getting here with the amount of ink. I was playing around with the little ribbon on the balloons, but I wasn't sure I liked it enough to continue. But anyway, scrap paper will let you test things out. So if we do the message first and we get into trouble, we can turn the whole thing over. But having taped down my piece, I'm hoping we can, there we go, keep moving along here. Okay, and then we'll just fast forward some more of the stamping, and you can at least see the progression. And I think the balloons going out of view from the taped edge does give you a whole sense that the balloons are moving up. So I think that's kind of fun. This way I'm stamping around the message, so I made sure that it fit properly by doing it first. And since this whole lesson has a lot to do with translucent qualities, the balloons, we're not going to worry about masking them because the overlap will just work with that, with the colors. While I'm making sure that that's dry, let me show you how I designed these two clusters to work separately or to work together. Okay, so these two designs work in a lot of fun combinations just like this. And if I were centering it in the middle of the card, that'd be a great way to do it. But since I'm going like they're going up in the air, I wanted to go off the edges. I went with a different composition. Okay, I think we'll do sky next. A light value blue and a rather wet brush is the easiest, I think. And this way I can kind of leave some whiter clouds around the words, and that'll sort of draw your eye to the middle. I'll do a little bit that much darker, could be tricky. But if we go that dark in here, we'll carry it over to here a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to soften the edge just a little bit in here. My lights are drying it quickly, so the movement of my brush strokes will be a little bit more important here as I add in another little layer. Okay, we want to make sure the blues have a chance to dry. I'll just revive my puddles here a little bit. Okay, and then we'll just fast forward some more of this, and you can just see how I proceed and kind of work back and forth. These complementary colors are liable to look a little bit strange, but I'm going to just take a light wash over the top. So your eye can kind of decide which balloon might be in the front and which one's behind. I should put a little bit of overlapping color here. Okay, there we painted across the top, so okay, that should work. We'll maybe paint that little section. And this one looks a little bit lighter, less intense color than the rest of the balloons, so I might remix some magenta here with the rose and the blue And we'll give it another, okay, that seems a little more interesting there. And then we'll just soften that edge a little bit. Sometimes I'll soften that highlight, but if it's too wet, then the color might just move into that space. So anyway, I think that's a very fun, festive batch of balloons there, and I actually finished my roll of masking tape and had to get another roll, and this works quite nicely. So there's some very festive balloons. I wanted to show you a couple other interesting ways that you can have some fun with this Fruity Drinks stamp set. And on this one, I taped the edges, and then I just took each icon and stamped it in rows, sort of, all the way across. And in this one, I started up in one corner, just stamping each of the little messages and the little pieces, and I just kind of kept filling it in and turning it whichever way. The cherries are a good filler, and I just sort of, by pre-cutting the paper, determined the proportions to make a full card out of it. And so this one I painted in just little bits of color everywhere, and this one I did more washes across a whole big area for a given color. And it just gives you two other very easy things that you can do. They may take a little bit of time, but it works together easy enough to paint. And on this one, I decided I would tear the edges, and I had just enough to get a hold of that edge, and I thought I'd tear that last edge. But if you start with the watercolor paper that's the right proportion, and you kind of look to make about the same space all the way around, I think this one gets set off nicely with a darker color. And so there's a card that way and another one this way. And then playing with the Orange You Glad We're Friends, a little message, I tried a couple of different papers and approaches, and I think you know, one of these might be fun way to just pop a message out. This one kind of took over too much of the paper, and you got to decide which color orange paper you might have handy. A wash of a peachy color is what I used on this one. So anyway, a couple more fun things you can do with that stamp set. So now let's do some different things with the lovely flowers. And there's two bunches of flowers in the set, and I'm going to use both of them with a bit of masking. So I will just fast forward as we do some stamping here and see if we can duplicate this beautiful bouquet. I am working on a standard size watercolor panel this time so that I can make it into an A2 card. So I just cleaned the ink off of that stem. Stamp that one to be in the foreground. I have my masks. I decided it was best to cut away the mask that was over the stem. It just makes a lovely combination. And actually I need to leave masks on to do the vase. So having covered that, now I'm ready for the vase. There, that allowed me to have the leaves forward of the vase. I'm going to do my stamping for this one, and then we'll do all the painting at the same time. I decided to do a horizontal layout this time, and I've also changed my messages, and I lined up configuration. Instead of straight, I did them all at angles, and I've tested it that I liked the look of it. So we're going to stamp that first and work around it. Okay, so now I might as well work back and forth between the similar colors, and I'll just start with my yellows, make sure my brush is nice and clean. These flowers are just so cheery in the yellows. But we'll fast forward this and you can just watch the progression. My brush is rather dry, so I'm getting nice intense color coverage here as I just do one pass of color. I might add some more little bits of blue here and there just for fun. And on this one we'll go to more of the lavenders. A bit more of the rose will give me a prettier magenta. And again, I added more just really dots of color to imply more of these pretty little purple blossoms in the bouquet. And we'll add some more of the lavender here, kind of just going in behind the blossoms. Okay, and then let's do some of these beautiful blue-gray, blue-green kind of colors on the vase. And again, the puddle that I created here earlier for our shadows is mostly phthalo with a little bit of the gray-black pulled into it. So let's start with, oh, actually a little bit of that lavender is going to be kind of interesting. Okay, this gives me a little bit different shade of blue, which is kind of fun. Almost like a periwinkle. I'll want a little bit more of the green tone with that, so I'm just going to let the two work together here. Back to a little bit more of the blue. So we'll do darker down here at the bottom. We're doing a core bit of color darker on this side to make it look a little bit more rounded. Okay. Just fun to create those in-between shades of color. And then let's go back to some more of our greens for the leaves, and we'll start with a nice cheery lime sort of green. Let's go back to this one, and again some very loose brush strokes of green. And I thought it was kind of nice to create some of this idea of foliage coming in behind. You don't want to cover up the message too much, but if I start with the light green and work my way around, and I can add some darker green as well. If you wanted a fun challenge, it would be interesting to lay down some just large loose areas of color and then stamp on top of that after you just had splotches of yellow orange and some of these different colors. You'd get an even more impressionistic but interesting look. So now I'm deepening my shade of green. This yellow has the phthalo blue. And so now if I want to keep the leaves light, I might go darker behind the leaves. And again, just some dots of color are going to make it look things are fading in and out of our field of flowers. I do like to paint all the way up to the edge of the tape so that it defines the edge. And now the same green will work for my leaves over here. And again, if I feel like I need some more green, I can just do little dots. Pull in a little bit darker shade in behind, and maybe even include a bit more color for the stems. I think we need a bit more orange on this one. And again, little tiny dots. My brush is almost too wet. Little tiny dots of orange are going to make the center look vibrant. And of course, you could have fun doing this in a whole different color scheme. So practice a color scheme that you like. And now we'll come back to our shadows, and I'll just come under the edge and then lift my brush. Okay, I think that maybe add a little bit more shadow under the leaves up here. Can make it seem a little bit more three-dimensional. Lots of fun variations. So hopefully you've had some fun with some new things in this lesson, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next one. Take a look at a few more samples here that we've made into finished cards.